So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today as you are filtering in. If you could, go ahead. You know the drill. If you've been here before, open up that chat. Let us know your name, your ecosystem, where you're coming from. We'll keep reminding folks of that as they join as well. And for those of you new to this initiative, I know some of you are new. I see a few new faces. The STEM Learning Ecosystems Community of Practice, SLECoP, supported by TIES, which you can find at stemecosystems.org, harness the power of business and industry, funders and foundations, K-12 schools, higher education, and more to find solutions to common problems and to build thriving communities. The SLECoP is focused on being an inclusive STEM community that champions access to innovation, opportunity, equity, and lifelong learning. And that's what we're here for today, is not only to address those goals, but also to expand our own lifelong learning. We want to try something new, do things a little bit differently. We're here to talk, as you know, about our recent extraordinary webinar with the National Science Foundation and what we as a series of ecosystems, as an international initiative, can do when we come together to come up with new ideas for funding, new ideas to solve the big problems present here in this country and around the world. I know some of you are just filtering in as I'm talking, so just a quick reminder, if you don't mind, open up that chat window, let us know who you are, where you're coming from. You also have a little Q&A tool down at the bottom. I'm not sure you're going to have many questions today because of the structure of today's session, but if you have any, please open that up. Let us know your question, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. So why are we here today? We're here to ideate. It says that right in the title, but this is my favorite part of the creative process, the phase of creation where you collect as many ideas or problems as possible. It's a critical step in both the design thinking process and all of our work, and we're going to engage with it today. But remember, this might be hard. This would be hard for me, and I know it's going to be hard for some of you because we are a community of problem solvers. And when we see somebody come forth and say, you know, I'm having issue X, I'm having problem Y, it's our tendency, and this is a good thing, it's our tendency to jump in and provide the solutions that we've found to address that problem. I know somebody here, I can hear somebody who's not muted right now. If you're talking and you don't mind muting, that would be appreciated. Thank you so much. So I know that we're a community of problem solvers, but during ideation, the goal is to generate a wide array of ideas without immediate concern for feasibility, practicality, judgment, or solutions. So as we talk today in our little breakout groups, we want you to talk about the problems you're facing. And if you hear something that you've got a great solution for, write it down. Maybe send an email to Jenny and say, I heard somebody talking about X and I've got this great solution. But for today, we're just here to find those problems that we want to think about as a potential for the applications that we're going to create to address in partnership with National Science Foundation and with other funders. So now I'm very excited to turn it over to our new director of the STEM Learning Ecosystems Community of Practice, Jenny Frank. Jenny.
Hello, Jeremy, and welcome everyone. We are very excited today. And like Jeremy said, we are trying to do something a little bit more interactive, a little bit more engaging. But really, we're kind of trying to do a little bit more of what a community of practice does. And that is learn and grow together and build the field. So today, what I wanted to start with is a little overview of some of the big needs that came out of the discussion before. And thank you to everyone who participated in the pre-webinar to help us to formulate the questions that we asked of Dr. Moore during the NSF webinar on January 10th. And so what I wanted to share with you were just some really big ideas that seem to be resonating with regard to SLEs and, you know, the need to want to acquire federal funding, not just NSF funding, but all funding sources, and being recognized as an entity that can do something like that. So again, from what we talked about the last time with Dr. Moore, some big ideas came out. The first one is clarification around how NSF supports regional and local ecosystems. I think that our team is doing a great job of advocating for what a STEM learning ecosystem is. And when we spoke with Dr. Moore, he talked a lot about the idea of unsolicited short proposals. He talked a lot about the idea around not just giving a 5, 10, 15 pager, but that getting a one-page document that really focuses on the grant aligned to intellectual merit and broader impact. Both of those are things that are evaluated and assessed as part of grants via NSF, but that really taking time and effort to work on those kinds of proposals is a great first step to connect with NSF as well as other grant funded agencies, as well as like private funding, to bring an idea forward, and that we don't always necessarily have to look for a specific box or an NSF grant, but that there are opportunities outside of that. And that's through personal relationships with program officers and grant funders. The second thing that I think came out of those discussions was talking a lot about, prioritizing and broadening access for ecosystems to access NSF funds. Dr. Moore specifically referenced the programs that I have there. And after this session this week, probably by Friday, which is, I realize, tomorrow, we will have links to all of the specific programs that Dr. Moore suggested that we dive deeper into. These are just a few of the ones that he talked about that he felt were best fit for STEM learning ecosystems as we advocated and built his insight around the community of practice and the work that we do. Another aspect was the idea of broadening participation. If you go to the NSF website, there is actually an entire section about broadening participation with special allocated funds for groups like HBCUs, HSIs, and tribal colleges and universities. And then finally, one of my favorite questions, because I think it is a big question mark in everyone's head, is what is NSF's direction when we think of emerging STEM fields? So when we're thinking of AI, technologies, quantum, all of these conversations that are coming up, and trying to be forward thinking so that we can be ahead of the curve as a community of practice to begin to talk about these things, plan for them, and be the innovators leading the charge. So again, a lot of funding around that. But I think a big takeaway and something that I feel very strongly about is that NSF is one of the most stringent application processes. So if we can really leverage the lessons that we're learning from applying to an NSF grant, and do things like creating white papers and really thoughtful concepts, project concepts, and being mindful that we are not only writing grants for merit, but writing grants with this foundational understanding of the broader impact of those grant ideas, the concept ideas, the work that we do as SLEs in a community of practice, then at the end of the day, we're actually preparing ourselves and building the skill within our community to be able to apply for any funding, to be able to reach any funder. And I think that that's the lens that we want to approach today's session with. So I'm going to take a moment and I want to introduce to you a very special guest, Casey Roach. I feel like some of you already know her. She works very close with our TIES team. She's done incredible work with Ohio most recently, but Casey comes from an organization called New Growth Group. And one of the services that they provide is to be experts in the field of grant forecasting as well as coaching. And we invited her here today because she's got some great insights about grant development, and more so concept development, idea generation. So Casey, welcome. Thank you for being here today. We're looking forward to hearing more about what tips and insights you can give us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. I am always excited to join the SLECoP. So Jenny, I don't know, we did prep a few slides. I don't know if you want to throw those. There we are. So perfect. I just wanted to start out with some best practices that we've noticed from our work nationwide when developing a grant proposal. So really what I want to stress first is that your project concept should drive your opportunity and not vice versa. So what do we mean by that? You should really be looking, you should have a very strong foundation of what you want to do. What is the problem that you're seeking to solve? And then from there, go out and look for opportunities that align to that, rather than looking at different grant opportunities, different funders who might come up and you're like, we're like 50% of the way there. Maybe we can square peg, round hole this one and fit our work to meet the funders objectives. And that is just not a great practice. You should really be seeking alignment. If you can get 75% of the way there, 90%, 100% of the way there in alignment, that really is where you want to be when you're looking at these funding opportunities. And so how do you do that? Concept papers really do provide us the strong foundation for development and collaboration. So through being able to synthesize, sort of what is our problem? How are we addressing it? What are those broader impacts that we're trying to achieve? I now have a piece of collateral, a piece of communication that I can take to, potential partners and say, hey, this is what we're doing and this is what we want to do. Can we work on this together? We know that we have this shared problem within our community, and you hold this piece of the pie and we hold this piece of the pie. You can also take that, of course, to different funders. So this paper that's highlighted here is in the NSF format, but this is just like a foundation. You can take this now to a philanthropic organization and say, hey, I know that your priority areas are aligned to the concept that we're having here. And now you have a sort of pre-written letter of interest that you can send to that philanthropic partner. If you have like local or state funders, like maybe your city provides some funding, maybe your state might provide some funding, you can look and leverage that concept paper there as the starts of a grant proposal. And then of course, the way that we're outlining this today will sort of be aligned with that higher tier National Science Foundation concept proposal, right? So just as Jenny said, right, if we sort of aim at what is the hardest sort of nut to crack there, like federal funding can be very competitive. And there's a lot of organizational development that needs to be in place to be able to access federal funds. But if we start at that sort of high tier level and then work our way down from that, then we're building that strength and we're building that capacity. So when we're thinking about these concept papers that we want to develop, here's a pretty simple outline. What is that problem that we are seeking to address? What challenges are we having in our community? And this is where data is going to be your friend. And this data can either be quantitative, so maybe we can put some numbers behind it, right? We know that, for example, when compared to their male counterparts, our female students are not indicating as much interest in STEM, and we're not seeing them matriculate into STEM post-secondary courses, right? So if you have that quantitative data that you can put behind it, that's really going to sell that point. But it also can be qualitative, which is, maybe we did a survey and we found that, this sector of our community, maybe teachers are feeling like they are under-resourced and we are wanting to help lift them up. And we now have that survey data where we can sort of show that problem. Or maybe we've done some focus groups and we really have some strong themes from those focus groups and those interviews to say like, yes, this is the specific flavor of our problem in our community. So data is really going to help you identify that problem and really tell the story. The next piece of a concept paper is like, so we have this problem, what are we going to do about it, right? Who are our partners? Who are we seeking to impact with this, right? Are we proposing a program to increase access to STEM after school programs for underrepresented students within our community? Great. That's who we're doing, and this is how we're going to recruit. This is how, you know, we're going to build cultural interest into our STEM programming so that the students can see themselves in STEM, so that they build that future identity, right? Like, what is, who are you working for, and what are you doing about the problem that you've identified? And then sort of, again, like, what are those intended outcomes, right? So if we're seeking to support underrepresented students in STEM through an after-school program, like, how many, right? Are we seeking, is it 50? Is it 100? Like, what are those outcomes? And then what is that broader impact? So if we impact these 100 students, we anticipate, like, based on research, that this many might choose to pursue a STEM pathway afterwards or continue their journey with STEM, right? And now we have a more diversified STEM workforce. And we know that that is beneficial because we have a diversity of perspectives, because we're helping to address talent shortages within critical STEM careers within our state, within our community. So really, what is that broader impact that we are seeking to have through our outcomes? And then finally, we want to limit it to a page. We heard this loud and clear on our last webinar. Like, as best as we can, we want to be succinct, we want to be to the point, and we want to do more showing and not telling. So really making sure that if we can limit it to a page, then more people are going to read it. I would also try to make it skimmable, right? Like, so that you can get those highlights right up front, sort of, what are we doing? How are we doing it? What are we hoping to accomplish through it? And that will really help you engage partners, engage funders, and build interest in your initiatives.
Casey, while you were talking, I put one of my favorite tools on the New Growth website, the Grant Forecaster tool. If anyone is out there looking for forecasting, language around grants, what kinds of grants are offered in addition to NSF, it's a fantastic tool that you can go to, and it helps to forecast what's coming up with that available funding. There is something else that we're planning on sharing with all the participants tomorrow, which are some briefs on specific grants that Casey and her team have identified as best fit grants based on their knowledge and understanding of what a STEM learning ecosystem is. And they will continue to provide those updates for us and that expertise. So we are really fortunate to have New Growth as part of our team this year while we're focusing on funding, right? Not just NSF funding. You know, one of the things that you said is that I love how you emphasize the one paper. Absolutely, right? And I think the reason for the one paper is really the importance around being able to communicate an idea effectively, efficiently, but also engagingly, right? So yes, we got to use data because we know that data can really give us hard facts to tell us something that we need to change, something that we really want to address. Maybe it brings up alarm bells, or it tells us the magnitude of the issue, the problem that we're looking to address. But another thing about concept development, and as a matter of fact, Jeremy, if you want to chime in here, I'd love it, because you're the one who kind of talked to me a little bit about the design of everyday things. And well, I think that's another aspect of, you know, thinking about the grant development process is, are we developing something that's not only usable, but engaging, not just to funders, but our actual audience, our stakeholders, the community that we're trying to serve?
And I think that what's really important about that is sometimes, especially those of us who are from the education space, right? When we start thinking about Are we going to be able to monetize this? Are we going to be able to get people on? Like that's not where we want to be. We want to be solely on how do we impact kids and make their lives better. But the reality of the world is that these folks, the people who are looking through thousands and thousands of submissions, particularly when we're talking about unsolicited things, we've got to have ideas that grab them. We have to have concepts that align with their beliefs and their focus areas and goals, and that really grab them in such a way that they dig into it and then they see that student impact. And that's, I think, a big part of what we have to be thinking about as we move forward with this process.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So what we're going to do with today's session is we're going to ask you to help us to build the field, okay? And the field in the first part of this field is that I think together what we need to start to be able to define and to communicate are the problems, the challenges that our communities are facing. I think that we all know these. I do think, though, that they're probably very much related to your particular community, your location, the space and place that you're working. But what we want to do today is we want to start to amass a generalized, national, global identification of challenges that communities are facing in these 5 areas of STEM. Now, interestingly enough, I went too far. I actually pulled these from a part on the NSF website. And this is from NSF. It's called Broader Impacts. I'm going to just, drop in the chat the link to this. I encourage everybody to really get into this and check it out. It is a wonderful resource to help kind of put into buckets big thoughts, big ideas, areas of focus around STEM. And so today, what I'm going to ask us to do is to pick from one of these 5 areas. Are you somebody who's interested in maybe pursuing funding, or maybe you have expertise around STEM workforce? Are you STEM education? Are you emerging STEM, thinking about, all these new and incredible devices, technologies, all this innovation coming through in STEM? Are you somebody who's passionate about STEM inclusion or STEM partnerships? And what we're going to do is we're going to post up right now, Lauren, if you wouldn't mind putting the breakout groups. We're going to post up these breakout groups and we're going to ask you to self-select. And when you get into those breakout rooms, what we're going to ask you to do is quick session, okay? So we're not really spending a ton of time dissecting the problems. We're just trying to make the longest list of problems, okay? And challenges. And the reason why, again, we're building the field, right? We need to take into stock that there are challenges that go beyond, that are global. And what we're going to do together is that's going to help us in our field building. It's also going to help us as we move further down and more practice groups, more opportunities to support, and to start to answer some of these challenges, not just as ourselves in our individual roles and SLEs, but as a community of practice, because that's what the SLECOP does. All right, so again, I'm going to ask, I'm going to stop sharing really quickly. Lauren's going to put up the breakout rooms. You're going to be able to self-select the breakout room that you want to go into based on one of those particular topics that I shared. Okay? Am I not seeing the breakout rooms?
They're up.
Oh, okay, great. I'm just not
Don't
seeing.
worry. They are
Okay, thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it. All right, so everybody go into there, and once we get settled in there, you'll have a facilitator, and I will provide you with the next direction.
All right. So Jenny, I know that the conversation in my breakout room was on fire. We only had 2.5 people there, and we still came up with so many really powerful ideas that to me already are kind of starting to take shape into something that could ultimately form into one of these really incredible proposals. I know you were jumping around. What'd you see in the other places?
Well, I saw a lot of confidence in the facilitators that their groups also did a lot of work. But honestly, looking at the lists, I think a big takeaway is there are a lot of challenges for us to solve, right? A lot of hands do good work, quick work, I think is another big thing. I think the next piece of the puzzle is, right, is that it's about being thoughtful, kind of like that dartboard, right? Hitting the bullseye. What is the problem and the challenge that you're going to identify and develop a solution for that is going to reach the most needs, right? But also align to the things that you do well as an organization, as an SLE. So what we're going to do with the rest of our session today is we're going to kind of just break into a small activity. It's a concept development activity, and it's called problem community needs. Well, it's not, it's called the concept. It's a concept development framework. And in it, it has 6 sections: problem, community needs, concept, but then also thinking about SLE strengths and practices, partnerships, and broader impact. So I'm just going to set the stage right here with just kind of what I addressed. And this is a great activity. We wanted to give you a resource today, a turnkey resource that you could take back to your community of practice, to your SLE, to your organization, to do a session just like this and to talk about what are our issues, right? What are our community needs? And what are some solutions? What are some concepts? What are some innovations that we can imagine ourselves doing to strengthen, the work that we do and to meet people, to actually impact the community we serve? So what we're going to do is we're going to work on a really simple template. I'm going to put you into random groups. Yes, you're going to work with other people, but as a turnkey provider, it's important, right, to remember that it's awkward and uncomfortable to not only throw out concept ideas, right, but to work together collaboratively to ensure that every person at the table has voice. That is probably one of the most essential things that you need to do as a STEM learning ecosystem and an organization, is that every person has a voice in the concept development. And the more voice and synergy that you can create in that moment, the more autonomy, the more accountability, and the more hands are going to help you to do that work. So really quickly, I want to share with you just an example before I put you into those random groups. We'll probably work in there for about 10 minutes. And I'm not asking for an essay. I'm literally asking for an example that looks like this. I'm pretty sure that after this last breakout room, you've got the skills to do this. We're not really worried about the concept merit. We're talking about the practice, the skill, the structure for actually working through a problem design. So this is really truly me as a principal of an elementary school in a rural community. I set out to find funding for an initiative that looked like this. The problem in our area is that we did not have a supermarket. We had a supermarket and it closed. And from that, we ended up with a gas station and a corner store. So obviously food insecurity became a very significant issue in our community, as well as nutrition literacy. Looking around at students' lunches, I wasn't seeing healthy choices. I was seeing easy choices. I was seeing choices filled with sugar and things that I didn't necessarily think were the best. And when I talked to kids about eating apples and grapes and bananas and such, I could tell that there was definitely a need for nutrition literacy. So what does the community need? Well, we needed a practical solution and approach to get families to have these conversations, to start talking about the importance of healthy living and sustainable living, that you don't always have to rely on a grocery store to get your food. And so the concept was we were going to have a community garden at our school. And we were going to develop grow kits that families could take home and they could start to engage in their own growing of vegetables at home, along with educational materials. So that is the problem, the community need, and the concept. But then we had to think about what are the things that we already do really well as a community. That's one of a really important concept when you're thinking about developing in a grant. Are we going to stretch ourselves beyond our skill set, beyond the things that we already do well? I think in a certain aspect you might, but you also don't want to be stretched so thin that your concept becomes unrealistic in the implementation. So here we go. We already had community events as an elementary school. As a matter of fact, this picture behind here was our open house that we did every year. And as families came in, we gave them a plant from a local gardener and they got to plant the community garden. And every time they came back to school for the fall, for the summertime and the fall, because we had an open house at the end of the year, they got an opportunity to check on their plant, have conversations, share a memory. We also knew that we had really great partners. We were working with Cornell Cooperative, who did a whole bunch of stuff around raising chicks, and we got to do all these Zooms where we saw chicks being hatched. It was very cool. The Girl Scout, Boy Scouts helped us to actually build as part of one of their service projects. Obviously, our local community of gardeners helped us by donating all of the vegetable plants that we used inside of there. We reached out and we discovered that we could get grants from local Walmarts, from Dollar General store, as well as a bee program grant. All of this to fund this because we had a strong concept. And lastly, we were able to show broader impact. So what is your activity right now? We're going to put you in random groups. You're going to work for 10 minutes and you're going to practice this idea of starting. What is the problem? What does the community need? What is the concept? Okay. And if time permits, what are the practices? What are the partnerships? And what are the broader impacts? The better you become at being able to tell this story, right? With data, with engagement, with excitement. I feel strongly, our team feels strongly, more opportunities for funding will come your way. All right, so with that, Lauren, would you mind randomizing everyone and sending them off to their breakout rooms? You'll be with a whole bunch of partners you probably have never worked with before. We're not looking for a perfect grant concept. We're just looking for some collaboration.
So welcome back, everyone. I'm sure this conversation was just as good as the last as we start to figure out how to turn this initial batch of ideation into solutions. So Jenny, we've talked a lot. We only have about 4 minutes left. What do we do for the close of today?
Well, I think what we wanted to do today, first thing I want to say as a takeaway is we could spend an entire hour just talking about problems and why they're important. That's my big takeaway. The second piece is we can probably have an entire session just talking about developing concepts, as well as follow-up sessions around strengthening concepts. I also have heard a ton of conversations around the need and the want to partner, not just with other SLEs, but really great thought partners, innovators in the field to go after some of these funding resources. So what I kind of want to end our session today on is with the what next. Today was just a little bit of an opportunity, a taste of some of the experiences that we're looking to put together as a community of practice. But maybe start to think to yourself and ask yourself this question. In my role, am I right now ready in the process of applying for a grant? Because if that's the case, I'm sure that we could develop a working group, a practice group, as you would call it in the community of practice, around what that looks like, support for that, implementation support. Maybe you're interested in matchmaking. You're looking for other partners, right? Maybe you're looking for partners and organizations that are innovating right now. Jarrell happens to be up right now, but the Innovation Atlas is a great partner to work with collecting data, right? And using that data to tell a story of all the wonderful work. So maybe you're looking for matchmaking. The SLECoP can do that. Maybe you're interested in working together as a team. Maybe we have a collaborative consortium and we apply together, not necessarily to push forward an initiative, but to support collaboration. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put in the chat a an interest form. I encourage you right now, as Jeremy closes up, to start to fill it out. It is not cumbersome. It's going to ask you who you are and where you're from and what your role is. And then from there, it's going to ask you just a couple of questions about your readiness. We're trying to gauge the field for where people are in grant application or funding application processes. But what we're also interested in is where you are interested in participating. So just really quickly, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go through here because I want to get to the last slide. And I'm just looking for really interesting numbers. Here's that readiness scale. But lastly, these are some of the opportunities that we believe right now we can start to support. The first ones you can see here are practice groups around actually applying for NSF grants, joint applications to support collaboration, looking for partners. We also have some ability to provide technical assistance and coaching around actual concept development, developing a white paper, using data, and identifying broader impact. We're also in the business of matchmaking, right? That's one of the best things that ties in our community of practice does for one another. So please take some time, fill out that form, let us know where you're interested in. And today was just the first of what I feel are many sessions, because I think we're all asking the same questions. How do I fund the great work? How do I make sure it's sustainable? How do I reach the most learners and community members in my community of practice? Jeremy?
Well, thank you so much, Jenny, and special thanks to everyone, but in particular, Casey Roach from New Growth Group. I know Casey always has really great insights into these processes, and I think maybe we should have Casey, if she doesn't mind, Casey, create kind of a little page, like a one-pager of what are the quick hits that we all need to keep in mind as we're thinking about these grants. I do want to encourage everybody, mark on your calendars right now. Registration isn't yet open, but put on your calendars right now that October 29th through the 31st is this year's big convening in Chicago. We hope to see all of you there. If you're new to the initiative and you don't know anything about this convening, make sure to reach out to Jenny. It's really one of the most powerful and fun and exciting, frankly, in-person events that I'm able to attend every year, and we hope to see all of you there. You'll be hearing more about this work really soon. There will be follow-up sessions. You'll get information for those shortly. So thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time.